That's interesting. There's going to be a plastics registry. Stephen Guilbeault is announcing a plastics registry. And Chrystia Freeland doesn't want to comment on the pro-Palestinian chants of River to the Sea and the October 7th chants and all the rest because she doesn't know which direction to go. She goes back to colleagues, I guess, Justin Trudeau, and asks which direction and then gets told the direction and tweets about it. But it's interesting considering, and other people are highlighting this, and this is where we're going to start today. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. But Brian Lilly highlights this, and he says, Chrystia Freeland is part of a government which has put forward a bill that, if passed, could put you under house arrest for things you might say in the future. Asked about chants and cheers for Long Live October 7th, Freeland says she can't comment. And there are lots of people who are upset at Freeland's dodge here. Phil says doesn't stop her from commenting on alleged incidents of Islamophobia that she's not present for. I wonder why that is, right? Oh, yes.
Over the weekend...
Sorry, I didn't push any buttons. It just starts playing sometimes. Matt Martin says she knows exactly what they said. The White House even issued a statement. This is your government right here, people. So here's what Chrystia, the question and the answer, and I think it's pretty okay for volume. Here we go.
Over the weekend, protesters in Ottawa were heard chanting, among other things, "Long live October 7th," and October 7th is proof that we are almost free. Is this hate speech?
I wasn't in Ottawa over the weekend, and I'm not aware of those specific reports, and so it would be just wrong of me to comment on something that I am not specifically aware of.
Remember when, like, the whole Liberal cabinet, Justin Trudeau, I don't know if Freeland herself commented on the hijab hoax, but the hijab hoax happened. It was reported on a radio program or something like that, and then put it in a newspaper. And then within 15 hours, Justin Trudeau and the whole Liberal cabinet had commented on it. And then it turned out it was fake, right? And I think probably the tweets are still up, right? So it's rich of her to be in a government that is willing to put you in prison for things you might say. People are worried that you might say hate speech online, maybe, so you lose all access to your online access, right? But if hate speech is being chanted or targeting any group is being chanted in the streets, I'm not really sure. I wasn't there. I didn't see it. Next question, right? Yeah, really. So that's the kind of selective application of the law this Liberal government is interested in. That's not good. Chrystia Freeland now follows up and says, having seen the video this weekend, I can only express shock and disgust at the anti-Semitism and glorification of terrorism that occurred on Parliament Hill. This hate speech has no place in Canada, none. So all of a sudden, right, they went and had a little powwow, 5:30 yesterday afternoon. Suddenly, right, after months of this stuff happening and the Liberals turning a blind eye, suddenly this hate speech is not okay in Canada. Weird. I mean, I wonder what changed, right? Son of a Bench says, remember, Freeland wants you to remember Islamophobia, even though it was pro-Palestinian. It was a pro-Palestinian mob that was chanting hateful and violent threats in Ottawa. Now, again, I want to underline, I'm trying to use the hate speech laws, the incoming hate speech laws that want to criminalize people for saying mean things online, juxtaposed with people chanting for the death of a group or the removal of a group, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, being completely ignored for months by the same government, right? I'm not trying to comment on I'm not trying to comment on that. That's not what this is about. This is about Chrystia Freeland, hate speech, and the selective application of what is hate speech. Why can some people say this in the police and nobody seems to respond? The police bring coffee and donuts. And if some people say Canada first, we'd really like our tax dollars to go to Canada instead of foreign wars, they get trampled by horses. You know, we'd like to not be mandated by the government to take experimental shots in order to work, right? They get trampled by horses. But people who say those people XYZ, right? Hate speech, hate speech, hate speech, as the traditional definition of hate speech, right? Those people are blind eyes turned. And I'm talking Black Lives Matter. I'm talking the people who are toppling statues. I'm talking rail blockades and people who are putting flaming debris in front of moving trains, which previously that would be pretty illegal, right? People who are chanting in front of Parliament Hill with magnified voices and electronically magnified voices. That was not allowed during the Freedom Convoy. Those people were given prison sentences, and horses were sent out to trample them, and police officers or military police or military, just run-of-the-mill military ground soldiers with no identification were deployed in against Canadian citizens for their audacity to say, listen, Canada first, hey? So that's what I'm trying to get at here. That's very concerning, right? And having the kind of half-assed measure of I'm going to tweet about it after the fact isn't good enough, is clearly underlining to me that these people know exactly what they're doing. 6 months later, after these protests are going, maybe the pro-Palestine thing burns out, and then the next one, I don't know, pussy hats, whatever it is, so long as it's a wedge, so long as some people are really for it and some people are really against it, and people can get into fights about it on the internet, then it's a perfect wedge and they'll drive it forward, right? So we've been one after the other for years now, years. And if you point it out and say, this is actually a distraction, this is a psyop, this is a paid for protest, people get mad at you. They say, what about the children? It's like, oh man, it's not about that. Let's save Canada first. Can't do anything if you're on a plane, like a Boeing or something like that, and it depressurizes, you have to put your mask on first. You can't put everybody else's mask on in order to save yourself, right? They'll save me once their mask is on. No, man, that's not how it works. Here's Rex Glacier, and he's responding to Global News. Global News says Ottawa police said Monday that they have opened a hate speech investigation after a pro-Palestinian rally over the weekend where protesters allegedly chanted support for Hamas October 7 attacks in Israel. And Rex says, allegedly, if only there was documented video proof. And I say, police assaulted freedom protesters and not one of them has been charged. We should not tolerate police charging citizens with hate speech if they can physically assault innocent, peaceful protesters with no concern for their freedom. Canada needs to be united for Canada and not for any other reason. And yeah, like, I really, really feel these are distractions. The air was going out of this Palestinian, Israel, Gaza thing. People, it's old now, you know what I mean? And same thing with Ukraine. People aren't like Slava Ukraini. The profile pictures have removed the Ukrainian flags for most sane people. And so you've got to get some air pumped back in there. So how do you pump some air back in there? You get high profile people to start talking about, oh yeah, that's definitely hate speech. It's really, really manipulative, and we're being manipulated, I feel. Justin Trudeau doesn't miss his Passover tweet. As Jewish Canadians across the country gather for Passover tonight, the words of Haggadah and the story of the Exodus are a timeless reminder. Through faith, we will persevere, confront anti-Semitism, and find hope and light among the darkness. And then I can't say that because I don't know how to say it. So whatever. Delta says, the Liberals imported hate groups from the Middle East, and now they're pretending to be upset about hate groups from the Middle East while drafting Islamist policies and legislation to protect hate groups from the Middle East. Not funny. Not funny. Not funny at all. And so it's interesting. Yesterday, I talked about Columbia University and how there are Jews on campus being hunted. Twitter's being hunted by, I don't know, mobs of pro-Palestinian protesters, but these are professional protesters. There are stories on Twitter of people going to get their children from Columbus. And again, I think this is partly true. Like if you see a report, if you have a kid there and you see a report like that, you're probably going to respond. But also I think it's seeded. You know what I mean? I think that people are planting the idea of, oh my gosh, we're so unsafe that blah, 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 we have to do this. And as this evolves, right, maybe there was some student protesters there, but suddenly it's full of paid protesters, professional protesters, the guys who showed up for the G7 in Toronto with their black covers on their face and lighting and Molotov cocktails, lighting things on fire, right? Like this is a different thing. And again, we're being manipulated. Ian says far left anarchists have taken over Columbia University campus grounds. These are professional protesters, and many are not even college students. And you can see this guy doesn't look like a college student, if you ask me. He seems too thick and bearded. Right? Often it takes a while to be able to grow your full beard, and I'm sure there's some guys there who have full beards, but it seems to me there's a lot of professional money and people being funneled into this to distract us and to say, look how unsafe things are, et cetera, et cetera. Australia wants to shut down X and wants to jail Elon Musk for daring to allow people to discuss things. And so Data Hazard says Australian Prime Minister taking time during his presser to advertise for Elon Musk. By and large, other social media responded appropriately to the calls for censorship by the e-safety commissioner. X chose not to. We know, I think, overwhelmingly Australians want misinformation and disinformation to stop. You can't stop that stuff. It doesn't work. Elon Musk is responding to this. He says, I'd like to take a moment to thank the Prime Minister for informing the public that this platform is the only truthful one. So, yeah, maybe. There's still lots of concerns with the censorship on X. I'm still censored on X. There are a lot of other people who I know who are still censored on X as well. And they talk about it openly, saying like, these people aren't allowed on X. What rules did they violate? These people didn't have amnesty. You know, sure, Alex Jones got amnesty, but not everybody, right? Nick Fuentes and some others too. And it's weird. Like, it's strange to be promoting Twitter as a free speech platform when there are clearly holes in that idea. So here's further Australians wanting to take down Elon Musk. This is a minute long, and it seems longer to me. It seemed longer when I listened to it, but this is only a minute. She's mouthing all the same free speech, people don't feel safe language that Chrystia Freeland is using. I didn't show you that part. Hold on. There's a longer clip of this Freeland one here, and she's talking about how people don't feel safe, and that's a problem. And it's not the government's job to make you feel safe. It's not the government's job to make you feel safe. It's the government's job to enforce the law. Police are there to enforce the law, right? And like, you should feel safe, right? Like, everybody agrees to play by the laws and the rules. Like, you shouldn't feel like you're going to get stabbed when you're walking in your downtown. You should feel safe like that. But sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. If somebody's calling you a poo-poo head, like, you shouldn't say, you know, or like if you're a man dressed as a woman and somebody says, dude, like, chill, that's not threatening your safety, but they use it this way. Now they're conflating this with the Palestinian protests, but it's a false, it's false, right? False equation. So here's just a little bit more of Chrystia Freeland talking about people not feeling safe. Here we go.
Aware of.
Too fast. I was listening to the whole thing so I could hear what she was saying. I like to hear context. Here we go.
Will say is today is a time in Canada when anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are on the rise. When we have there are a lot of Canadians who are not feeling safe. In my own riding of University Rosedale, the JCC, a really important center for Jewish Canadians, but also for all Canadians, has faced a lot of pressure, and I've been there to meet with people there. There's also a mosque in my riding that faced pressure and attacks, and I've met with the leaders there. Hate speech.
You met with the JCC, whatever, and apparently that's important to a lot of Canadians, but I've never heard of it. Couldn't tell you the words that stand in for the acronym, and I've never been to the JCC, whatever it was, period. And then she talks about a mosque, and she says we've talked to people there, and then she doesn't mention how many Christian churches have been burned in the last couple of years. Right, moving on. Right, like we're super inclusive. We're super worried about people feeling safe and stuff, and people don't feel safe, and we're going to leave out the churches, etc., that are being burned down. Okay, so anyway, I wanted to show you the safety language, and here is the Australian. I think this is a mayor, but no, I think maybe higher place than a mayor. I can't remember exactly. The tweet says it. Listen to this Karen from Australia talking about the job of the government to stop misinformation and disinformation. I don't know what her position is, but this is the feeling, this is the rhetoric being spread in Australia. Here we go.
It just beggars belief, really, doesn't it? That this guy, this egotistical billionaire, thinks that it's more important for him to be able to show whatever he wants on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it today. It's more important for him to have his way than to respect the victims of the crimes that are being shown on social media, and to protect our Australian community from the harmful impact of showing this terrible stuff on social media. Like, we are acting in Australia. We have quadrupled the budget for the e-safety commissioner. We tried to introduce a misinformation and disinformation bill last year. Sadly, the Liberals and Nationals didn't support it at the time. Peter Dutton and Susan Ley said that they will now. That's good. We need to keep Australians safe from this terrible stuff on social media, and Elon Musk doesn't dictate to the Australian government what we are doing here domestically with our laws. It just beggars belief.
It's funny because he's saying that he's trying to obey the laws of the country that he's in, right? With the guiding principle being the United States and the First Amendment, free speech above all else, blah, blah, whatever. And so it's interesting to me that them saying, you know, strong Australia doesn't kowtow to Elon Musk. And Elon Musk is just trying to abide by the laws as they were prior to everyone collectively losing their minds and saying, you know what a real danger to democracy is? Free speech. Nope, that's not accurate at all. Here is a movie. I didn't want to give any clicks to the Globe and Mail to satisfy your curiosity about what this movie is about. So I clipped it from Rotten Tomatoes. But they're promoting, and the people who made this movie, production companies are Ontario Creates, Telefilm Canada, and a bunch of other, I think Elevation Pictures is another Canadian movie, like movie house type deal. Okay. And the premise for this movie it says, Humane takes place over a single day, mere months after a global ecological collapse, climate change, has forced world leaders to take extreme measures to reduce the Earth's population. In a wealthy enclave, a recently retired newsman has invited his grown children to dinner to announce his intention to enlist in the nation's new euthanasia program. But when the father's plan goes horribly awry, tensions flare and chaos erupts among his children. So it's made in movie form, right? Like it's government-assisted murder. Like, oh no, climate change is bad, so the only solution is we're going to draw short straws, and people who pull the short straws have to die. And so the whole movie, and I mean, this is presupposing that retired gentleman just wants to, you know, end his life on the day he retires. I can't live without work. Just kill me now. Yeah, right. So he announces to his adult children that he's going to die. But what? This is predictive programming. We are, and here's the Rotten Tomatoes thing. It's predictive programming. I just thought it was really strange. We're being flooded with all sorts of messaging around feeling safe. We have to make people feel safe in the backdrop of churches burning and the government saying, hey, that looks like a real bad stub toe. Have you thought about MAID? Right? Like, here's some fentanyl for that stub toe. Would you like some MAID with that? And it seems just crazy town, right? Like, oh, your safety is paramount. Let's kill you off now. In the same freaking breath, right? Like the concerning, no wonder everybody's anxious about everything all the time, right? Like who could find ground? It's like you're drunk and you've had too much to drink, but for some reason putting your foot on the ground makes things all better. You're like, if I can just fall asleep without falling off the bed like this, things are going to be fine. That's what it feels like just reading the news in Canada today. Moving on. So they did a gun registry for a while. There's the gun registry, the long gun registry. Remember that? And there was a battle about the long gun registry. People were fighting like, we don't need a long gun registry. And other people were saying that we do need a long gun registry. And they took the data and they scrapped the data and somebody else kept the data. Somebody exported the data and blah, 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 blah. There's been a long protracted fight about the long gun registry for years and years and years. And like since the early 2000s, even the mainstream news were talking about it in the early 2000s. But now they want to register plastic, and they want to do it at the production level. So if you produce plastics, you're supposed to tell the government, register how much plastic you're producing every year. And Stephen Galbeau makes this announcement. CTV News says Canada to force plastic makers to report how much they make, reuse, and recycle. So here's Galbeau's speech about this whole thing, and the salmon jacket is real nice. Here we go.
The registry will require plastic producers to take more responsibility for the plastic they put on the market. Every year, from now on, they must declare the quantity and types of plastic they supply, how these plastics move through the economy, and how they are managed at the end of their life. The registry will require plastic producers to take more responsibility.
How they're managed at the end of their life. I mean, like their grocery bags, man. And a lot of them break down. A lot of the current grocery bags post, I don't know, 2000, I guess, have recyclable, we break down. Maybe it's because I'm in Guelph, but I thought it was Kitchener too. It was something that there were problems with plastic bags that the plastic bag manufacturers tried to fix by making kind of crappier plastic bags, thinner plastic bags, bags that break down, so on and so forth. And I don't know if that means they break down in the landfill, or if they're supposed to break down over 15, 20 years or what. I don't know what exactly the goal is or anything to that effect. I don't know the details of biodegradable plastic bags, but it seems like a poor argument to vilify an entire industry, especially something like plastics, where before, like shampoo bottles that weren't plastic used to be glass, right? And if you drop that thing, man, good luck. So I don't know. Maybe they had tin. Maybe it was tin, but I don't know. I'm sure they had other ways of not having lots of glass bottles in the shower. But fundamentally, vilifying plastic is not helpful. Creating a registry, I don't think it's going to create more. Like now, all of a sudden, you need a person in the position to comply with this registry expectation, right? And so that's going to cost you money. It's going to cut into your profits at the very least, right? So it's very, very concerning. And I don't think that there's going to be anything good coming from measuring the amount of plastic that is created by Canadian companies and corporations, because that'll give the government a chance to say, hey, well, we think that you could be as profitable with a third of the amount of plastic that, and then, well, the government's, want to run the company? Then, let's talk about housing briefly. Darshan Maharaja says Globe and Mail is reporting today about skyrocketing asylum claims by international students since 2018. I tweeted about this on November 28th of last year. Credit for digging up this data goes to this guy or gal, this person, whatever. Many people here had disputed this at the time. We talked about this when he came out with this, and I said this data is plausible, and it looks like it's their own data. I think this is probably happening, and now the Globe and Mail is talking about it. So we're streets ahead on the show, everybody. We're months and months ahead of the mainstream media. You're welcome. Pierre Poilievre is talking about immigration and who's broken immigration. He says the current immigration minister admitted. There you go. The current immigration minister admitted the international student program got out of control. Sorry, I'll start again. The current immigration minister admitted the international student program got out of control under the previous Liberal minister. Today, we learned asylum claimants by international students are up 1,500% in 5 years. That's not good. Who's responsible for breaking the system? Sean Fraser. Trudeau appointed the guy who broke the immigration system to fix the housing crisis. Yay! And it's not very good. This is a video here of an international student teaching others about food banks and how to exploit food banks. And videos, this is how I save hundreds of dollars.
Hundreds of bucks every month in food and grocery. All these groceries for this week I got free. This for everyone, all the students. They even have hot food at our university. Yeah.
So there you go. Taking stuff that's meant for people who can't afford it or who can't make those kind of ends meet, and they're being scammed by guys like that. I think that's not good. And we're suckers for turning a blind eye to it, I think. Tarek says, Australia needs more construction workers. Okay, so we've been told in Canada, we're going to just build millions of homes, 4 million homes in a couple of years, right? 3.91 million homes or something like that. And now they've realized that they need actual people to do that. And it's not just people like Joe Blow off the street, here's a hammer. Justin Trudeau illustrates that not everybody can swing a hammer, right? And so when you have to actually practically build those houses, the Liberals and their promises come up with the harsh slap of reality. And so we're in a pickle, and Australia is in the same pickle because they're creating the same situation there. Sorry, I got it a bit wrong. The narrative in Australia is that they need more construction workers in build. But the reality is that Australia has almost 50% more construction workers per capita as the US, and 57% more than the OECD average. Perhaps the demand side of things need to be considered. So it's the same problem, though, in Canada. They're saying the problem is we're not building enough houses, and everybody's saying, well, supply and demand, with the demand side being super high, is the real problem, and they're not willing to look at that. And the same thing's happening in Australia. So problems abound in all the Western countries. And it seems like it's all the same problem in lockstep. Weird, right? Just such a weird thing. CTV News says, toxic, how the search for the origins of COVID-19, you mean the Wuhan flu, turned politically poisonous. It was never politically poisonous. As soon as we started calling it COVID-19, that solved racism, obviously, right? Yeah, sure. And it didn't come from a Winnipeg lab or a Wuhan lab or have anything to do with fired Chinese military scientists working in Canada. Nothing at all to do with any of that. Thank you. Stop asking questions. Canada Proud says the Trudeau Liberals have admitted that they spent more than $2.2 million in their failed attempt to fight the court challenge against the decision to invoke the emergency powers against peaceful protesters. Just $2.2 million? Where our legal system is so hamstrung and failed that we can't get a court to actually honestly look at what the Trudeau government did, because the Trudeau government is seemingly in charge of everything behind the scenes, the courts, the human rights tribunals, all of these things. It seems like they've got their finger in every pie, and everybody's going to whistle past the graveyard and not see the criminality or not see the problems with everything. $2 million, that's a drop in the bucket. How much did we send to Ukraine? 60 billion recently, right? Mocha has this, and we've been talking about how Danielle Smith took power kind of on the back of supporting Coots guys, supporting Archer Pulowski, supporting these people and saying, we're going to make sure that, things are put right here. And I took that to mean that the underlying premise was faulty, or the rules to exist that drove these people to protest. And because the rules were faulty, because Jason Kenney broke the law, because AHS couldn't do what they did, they weren't allowed to do that, and Kenney abdicated his responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. The full foundation of all of the other COVID restrictions were faulty. And because of that, you would think that these accusations would fall flat or be vacated or something. And they're not. And in the face of them not being vacated or whatever, you would expect the president, if you were in the United States, to pardon you, or like Trump is promising to do for the January 6 people who are being persecuted for political reasons. You would expect that. I would expect Danielle Smith or Doug Ford to say, this is a miscarriage of justice, and that's not going to happen in my watch. Here's the notwithstanding clause, whatever you need, and get these people out of prison because a black mark on our history. But that's not happening either. And so Mocha, good for him. He's doing a great job out there in Alberta. And he's interviewing one of the Coots Four. He says, Coots convict Danielle Smith will be seen as a significant disappointment in history books. Marco Bibino now faces up to 10 years in prison after being convicted of mischief over $5,000, along with two others in the Coots blockade. Fires back at the premier for her deflecting comments about the verdict. I'll take accountability. I will wear it with my head held high. But where is the accountability for those who forced us to go to that border? Asks the former Fort Macleod city councillor Huguenot about the provincial and federal government's pandemic-related mandates that sparked significant uproar over civil liberties and freedoms. She ran on the anti-COVID support, the anti-Kenney support, the anti-government tyranny support, and now we have her weakened. I believe it is a strategic decision. It's not a failure of the individual. This is a strategic decision by Danielle Smith to compromise, and that I can't support. For more independent and balanced journalism, check out more from Mocha. He's doing good interviews, etc. But Yeah, it's a 12-minute interview. It's on CanadaReport.co on the right-hand side under things I want to watch underneath the sidebar. And it's just it's 12 minutes, so it's a bit broader than today's podcast encapsulate. But I think that it's important, and I mean, it brings me back to the question I've been asking for years. What's your game, Danielle Smith? Right? Like, and Jason Kenney, what's your game? It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. The WHO. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful